Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to have this mysterious pull that draws others toward them? They're not necessarily the loudest in the room or the most conventionally attractive, yet everyone wants to be around them. They walk into a space and somehow shift the entire energy without even trying. Here's what's fascinating. These magnetic individuals often share two specific personality types that most people completely misunderstand. INTJ and INFJ make up less than 4% of the population combined, yet they possess a rare form of magnetism that can leave others absolutely captivated. But here's the twist. The very traits that society often tells them to hide or change are actually their greatest superpowers. And the most powerful magnetic quality they possess is something that goes completely against what every self-help book tells you about being likable. I'm saving that revelation for later, because once you understand it, you'll see these personality types in a completely different light. I'm going to show you exactly what makes INTJ and INFJ so magnetically attractive to others, why their mysterious nature works like a magnet, and how their seemingly contradictory qualities create an irresistible combination that people can't ignore. By the end of this exploration, you'll understand why these rare personalities have such a profound effect on everyone they meet. The final magnetic trait I'll reveal is the one that explains everything. So stick around, because that's where the real revelation happens. Let me start with something that completely changed how I understood magnetic attraction. I used to think charismatic people were always the ones commanding attention, telling stories, making everyone laugh. Then I met someone who barely spoke yet had the entire room gravitating toward them. They weren't performing or trying to impress anyone. They were just existing in their own quiet intensity. Everyone wanted to know what they were thinking. Everyone wanted to get closer to that mysterious energy. That person was an INTJ. And that's when I realized magnetism isn't about being the most entertaining person in the room. The mystery factor. When INTJ and INFJ enter any social situation, they bring something most people have never learned to cultivate. Genuine mystery. Not the fake kind where someone pretends to be deep or interesting. The real kind that comes from having rich inner worlds that others can sense but never fully access. Most people are open books. They share everything immediately. Their thoughts, their feelings, their entire life story within minutes of meeting someone. However, INTJ and INFJ operate differently. They reveal themselves in layers, slowly, selectively, and only to those who prove worthy of their depth. This creates something powerful in others. Curiosity. When you can't immediately figure someone out, when there are depths you haven't explored yet, your brain becomes fascinated. You want to understand them. You want to discover what's behind those thoughtful eyes or that quiet confidence. Therefore, people find themselves drawn to INTJ and INFJ not because they're trying to attract attention, but because they naturally create intrigue. I watched this happen at a conference once. An INFJ sat quietly during a group discussion, listening intently, occasionally nodding or asking one insightful question. While others were competing to share their opinions, she was processing everything deeply. When she finally spoke, everyone leaned in. Her words carried weight because they came from genuine reflection rather than a need to be heard. People approached her afterward, not because she had performed, but because they sensed there was something profound beneath the surface they wanted to understand. The depth advantage. Here's where INTJ and INFJ have a massive advantage over most personality types. They don't do small talk naturally. While everyone else is discussing weather and weekend plans, these types are thinking about concepts, patterns, human nature, and the deeper meaning behind everything they observe. This creates a problem and a superpower simultaneously. The problem is they often feel disconnected from surface-level social interactions. The superpower is that when they do connect, it's at a level most people rarely experience. When an INTJ or INFJ finally opens up to someone, that person feels like they're being given access to something rare and valuable. Because they are. These personality types don't share their thoughts with everyone. They're selective about who gets to see their inner world. Therefore, when they choose you, it feels special. It feels meaningful. And people crave that kind of authentic connection in a world full of shallow interactions. I remember talking to an INTJ about a book we'd both read. Instead of just saying whether they liked it or not, they analyzed the themes, connected it to broader patterns in society, and shared insights that made me see the entire story differently. That conversation stayed with me for weeks. Not because they were trying to impress me, but because their natural depth of thinking created something memorable and meaningful. The selective connection power. Most people try to be liked by everyone. They adjust their personality depending on who they're talking to. They say what they think others want to hear. However, INTJ and INFJ do something completely different. They're authentic from the start, which means they naturally filter for genuine connections. They don't waste energy trying to win over people who aren't aligned with their values or interests. This selective approach creates something magnetic. When someone knows you're not trying to please everyone, your attention becomes more valuable. When people realize you're genuinely yourself rather than performing a version of yourself, they trust you more. And when others sense that you're choosing to spend time with them rather than desperately seeking anyone's approval, they feel honored by your presence. This is why INTJ and INFJ often find themselves in situations where people seek them out for advice, deep conversations, or just their perspective on things. Others recognize that these personality types see things differently, think more deeply, and offer insights that can't be found elsewhere. They become the people others turn to when they want substance rather than surface-level interaction. The intensity that draws people in. There's something about the way INTJ and INFJ approach life that others find absolutely captivating. They don't just exist casually. They live with intention, think with purpose, and engage with intensity when something matters to them. This creates a presence that others can feel even from across the room. When an INTJ gets passionate about an idea, or when an INFJ feels deeply about something, that intensity becomes palpable. People are drawn to that energy because it's so different from the casual, half-hearted way most people engage with life. There's something magnetic about someone who cares deeply, thinks intensely, and commits fully to whatever captures their attention. I witnessed this at a book club where an INFJ was discussing a novel that had clearly affected them profoundly. They weren't just giving opinions or surface-level commentary. They were connecting the story to human psychology, to patterns they'd observed in relationships, to deeper truths about how people navigate pain and growth. Their eyes lit up as they spoke. Their voice carried conviction. Everyone else stopped their side conversations and listened, because that level of genuine engagement is rare and compelling. This intensity isn't overwhelming or aggressive. It's focused and purposeful. When INTJ and INFJ direct that energy toward understanding someone or exploring an idea, others feel the full weight of their attention. And receiving someone's complete, undivided focus is intoxicating in a world where most people are distracted, scattered, or only half present. The quiet confidence phenomenon. Here's where these personality types break every rule about traditional charisma. They don't need to be loud or dominant to command respect. They don't need to prove themselves through constant talking or attention-seeking behavior. Instead, they possess something much more powerful: quiet confidence that comes from knowing themselves deeply and being comfortable with who they are. This shows up in how they carry themselves. An INTJ walks into a room not looking for validation or approval, but simply existing as themselves. They don't fidget or perform or try to fill every silence with chatter. An INFJ listens more than they speak, but when they do contribute, their words carry weight because they've been carefully considered. People are magnetized by this self-assurance because it's so different from the insecurity and need for external validation that drives most social behavior. When someone doesn't need your approval to feel good about themselves, paradoxically, you want to give them that approval even more. When someone is comfortable with silence, comfortable with being themselves, comfortable with not being the center of attention, they become magnetic precisely because they're not trying to be. I've seen INTJ at networking events who barely initiated conversations yet had people approaching them all evening. Why? Because their calm presence and genuine interest when someone did talk to them created a safe space that others craved. They weren't working the room or collecting business cards. They were simply being authentically themselves, and that authenticity acted like a beacon for others seeking real connection. The emotional depth magnet. INFJ especially possess something that draws people in like nothing else: emotional intelligence and empathy that allows them to see and understand others at levels most people never experience. When an INFJ looks at you, they're not just seeing your surface presentation. They're picking up on your emotions, your motivations, your struggles, your hopes. And somehow, without being invasive or inappropriate, they make you feel truly seen. This creates an immediate bond that others find almost addictive. Most people go through life feeling misunderstood or only partially known. Then they encounter an INFJ who seems to understand them completely, who asks the right questions, who responds to what they're really saying rather than just their words. That level of understanding is so rare that people become drawn to anyone who can provide it. INTJ create a different but equally powerful form of emotional magnetism. While they might not read emotions as naturally as INFJ, they offer something equally valuable. They see potential in others that those people might not even see in themselves. They recognize patterns, capabilities, and possibilities that others miss. When an INTJ believes in someone or sees their potential, that recognition can be life-changing. The unpredictability factor. Most people are predictable in their reactions, their opinions, their responses to different situations. However, INTJ and INFJ think so differently from the majority that their perspectives often surprise others. They see connections others miss. They ask questions others wouldn't think to ask. They approach problems from angles others never considered. This intellectual unpredictability keeps people engaged and curious. You never quite know what an INTJ or INFJ is going to say next, but you know it will probably be interesting, insightful, or thought-provoking. That element of surprise creates anticipation. Others find themselves looking forward to these personalities' contributions because they know they'll gain a new perspective or see something they hadn't noticed before. The loyalty magnetism. When INTJ and INFJ do form connections, they're typically deep and lasting. These personality types don't collect superficial relationships. They invest in fewer people but invest more deeply. This creates something incredibly attractive to others: the promise of genuine, lasting connection in a world where most relationships feel temporary or surface level. People recognize that earning the friendship or respect of an INTJ or INFJ means something significant. It means you've been evaluated and found worthy of their time, energy, and emotional investment. That recognition feels valuable because it is valuable. These personalities don't give their trust or affection easily, so receiving it feels like a genuine accomplishment, rather than something that was handed out indiscriminately. So there you have it. The magnetism of INTJ and INFJ isn't about following conventional social rules or trying to please everyone. It's about embracing their natural depth, mystery, and selective authenticity. Their power lies in being genuinely themselves, while others are performing versions of themselves. If you recognize these traits in yourself, stop trying to change them. They're exactly what makes you magnetic to the right people.